So in this quick video, I'm going to give you an overview of how you can enable the internationalization or localization in your Spring Boot application, right? If you're working on any of the web application, this is a very common requirement. So I'm going to quickly cover different steps which are required in order to enable this feature in your Spring Boot application. I have already created a web application. This is a simple Spring Boot web application where I'm just using Thymee Leaf as the templating engine, right? If you are not sure how to create a Spring Boot application, please refer to the tutorials how to create a Spring Boot application. Okay, so let's quickly start. So for this demo purpose, I'm going to enable two different languages for my application. One is going to be the English, which is going to be the default one, and I'm also going to enable the German as an additional language option for my application. Okay, to start this, the first step which is required is to make sure you have the right properties, you have a localized properties in your application, right? So for that one, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add two property files under the resource folder. One is going to be the messages.property file, and another one is going to be the messages underscore de.property file. Okay, so let's quickly add those one, and then we will be talking about the naming convention for that one. So these are my two different property file, right? Messages and messages.de property file. I added a couple of different properties, one into the default one and the translated one into the messages.de property file. So there is a certain naming convention. You have to make sure that the language is a part of your property file. So for example, if you want to introduce another file for let's say for let me to think about it, which language should be I be adding? Maybe Norwegian. So you have to make sure that that language is a part of this message.de property file. Or for example, if you want to introduce another version for a Netherlands, so you need to make sure that you are adding a messages underscore nl, which is the language for Netherlands, right, for the Dutch. So this is the first step of your to enable the internationalization in the Spring Boot application, right? The next step for us is to add two beans. One is going to be the locale resolver bean. So this locale resolver is basically, this is based upon the request and the session or cookies, etc. So what it does is it basically set first of all the default locale into the session and making sure that the locale information is available to your application. The locale change interceptor is basically responsible to intercept all the requests, incoming requests, and then it's basically going to look into a certain parameter, which is going to be the lang parameter, and it makes sure that it intercept the request, understand what is the request, what is the localization or language request coming as part of the in the request, and it will set that request in the context. Okay, so let's quickly add those two beans as the second step of our application. So let's quickly start with our application. Okay, the first one which I'm going to add is the locale resolver. Okay, so this is a part of our servlet package, locale resolver, and we are going to use a session locale resolver. I will call it as a locale resolver. What happened? My bad, sorry. Okay, locale resolver dot set default locale, and I'm going to set locale dot us. Okay, Okay, locale.us. Finally, I'm going to return locale resolver. Okay, so this is our bean. Okay, the second bean is the locale change interceptor bean. This is going to be the same thing. Okay, come on. Interceptor, come on. Locale change interceptor. Locale. Don't know what happened to my editor. Okay, locale dot set parameter, and this is really important. Okay, you need to make sure that not lamp g. Okay, and then we need to make sure that we are returning this locale change intercept. Okay, so this parameter, we have to make sure that you are naming the parameter name is correct, otherwise your application is not going to work. Okay, so be careful while you are defining those beans. Okay, the last thing for us is because this is an interceptor and we want to make sure that all incoming requests are being intercepted and being kind of this interceptor is checking the incoming parameters. We need to add this interceptor into the interceptor registry. So let's add that to the interceptor registry. So here we go, right? We add it. The last step for us is we need to make sure that we are adding it as a configuration. Okay, there are two steps for this one. Okay, the first thing is where you that was the problem. Okay, either you can use this different configuration class, or you can use this bean definition into the this main or Spring Boot main application. It's a choice. I just want to separate out the things, and that's the reason I'm defining these separately. Okay, the next step for us is we are going to quickly create a controller. Okay, and this controller is nothing but basically it's going to have a simple mapping, and it's going to return a simple welcome string. So let's quickly add that one. So this is our simple controller. There is nothing fancy about this. It's just mapping to the root mapping, and it's returning just a welcome string. Okay, so the next step for us is to create the HTML. So what I'm going to do is under the template, and since we are using ThymeLeaf as the templating engine, so we really don't need any specific configuration. Spring Boot has a built-in integration for that one. So what I'm going to do is under the template, I'm just going to create a simple HTML for us. Okay, we have added our HTML. Okay, so what I'm doing is, if you see, these are the welcome.message. These are the properties, right? Language.change, what is the change language, and then English, and then German, right? So I'm mapping these. This is the welcome message. This is another property which I'm reading from the property file, and these are the two additional language properties. Okay, since I need to make sure that if I am changing the language from the drop down, the request is being sent to the backend, to the R controller. So I'm just using this small JavaScript code for this one. Okay, and since this is a jQuery code, I'm adding this jQuery directly to my HTML. Right? These are just for this demo. Probably once while you are working onto the actual application, you may have kind of the templating, a small template where you are going to include all those JavaScripts. Okay, so I'm not going to get into those details. All right, so at this point we are almost set with our, our configurations. Let's run our application and see this in action. Okay, so I'm going to run our application. So my application started. Let's quickly check this application onto the on the front end. Let's run our application. All right, so here we go. Okay, so I'm not setting any kind of language here, right? So uh, the default language in my application is English, right? Let's quickly check our configuration. So if you see, the default language is US, and we have these configurations as the default one. So for my application, it's picking everything based upon the language, default language, which is US. Okay, let's change our language to German. So right now I have this as in a German text. I haven't done the, the translation for this one, so that's the reason why this is coming out as the default one. Okay, and if you see that I'm passing the language as an additional parameter. Okay, if I change it back to English, I can see the right now that interceptor will come into the picture. The language passed in that in a parameter is en, so it's going to set en as a locale. So in that case, my application is going to read everything from the en. Okay, if I'm setting it as German, the language passed is de. It's going to pick everything from that de property file. Okay, so that this is how you are going to set up your configuration. There is nothing kind of uh, a very fancy setup here. All you have to make sure that you have those two beans configured in your application, and you are adding your interceptor as part of the interceptor registry, and you should be good to go. I hope you will find this tutorial as helpful.